This Romanian prince committed such unspeakable atrocities that his legend became immortal, and he does not. Look at this. Imagine miles of forest dotted with impaled bodies, a silent and terrifying warning. This was the signature of a man who ruled with an iron hand, a reign of dread that would echo for 500 years, giving rise to one of the most feared creatures in fiction. You need to understand this first. The story of Vlad III, known as the Impaler, is not just a medieval horror tale, it's a complex puzzle of survival, brutal politics, and a disinformation campaign that has shaped the perception of an entire country. The first mistake everyone makes is to see him only as a sadist. The truth is that every act of cruelty, every life taken served a greater purpose, a purpose few historians dare to explore in depth. The detail that no one noticed for centuries is how real fear merged with the oldest superstitions of the region, creating something new and horrifying. Transylvania, a land of dense forests and shadowy castles, was the perfect stage for Vlad's terror to take root. Born in 1431 in Sighișoara, he was the second son of Vlad II Dracul, a member of the Order of the Dragon, a Christian military society dedicated to fighting the Ottoman Empire. This heritage already carried the weight of a fierce image, and Vlad's childhood was marked by war and betrayal. At the age of 13, he and his younger brother were handed over as hostages to the Ottomans, a cruel bargain to secure their father's loyalty. This traumatic experience, far from being a mere biographical detail, was the catalyst that would shape the monster that would be feared. During years of captivity, Vlad witnessed and suffered the Ottoman brutality, a school of cruelty that he internalized and perfected. He learned that fear was the most powerful weapon, more effective than any army. When he finally returned to Wallachia, his homeland, he found it in chaos, a battleground for traitors and foreign invaders. His father and older brother were murdered. This family betrayal, combined with the years of torment, forged in him a relentless thirst for order and revenge, no matter the cost. And it is at this point that the line between political necessity and personal barbarity begins to blur. Vlad's accession to the throne of Wallachia was a bloodbath. He spared no one whom he considered a threat, and his methods were shocking even for the time. Impalement, his favorite technique, was not just a form of execution. It was a spectacle of psychological terror designed to paralyze his enemies and ensure obedience. Imagine entire cities surrounded by a forest of stakes, each boasting the body of an enemy, a visceral warning to anyone who dares to challenge their power. What I'm going to show you now, only 1% know. This cruelty was not random. It was a calculated strategy to protect your kingdom from a much greater threat than you can imagine. Vlad's cruelty was not an end in itself, but a tool to carve an iron order into a kingdom torn apart by intrigues and invasions. He eliminated the boyar nobility that he saw as treacherous, consolidated his power, and prepared Wallachia for the inevitable war against the Ottoman Empire. His methods were brutal, yes, but incredibly effective for the time. The question that hangs is, would the vampire legend have emerged with the same force if Vlad had been a benevolent ruler? The answer, you will find out, is in an obscure fusion of historical facts and ancestral fears that experts hide. The detail that no one has noticed for centuries is that Transylvania and the surrounding regions were already fertile in undead superstitions long before Vlad even wielded a stake. The legends of strigoi, or moroi, creatures that rose from the grave to drain the life of the living, were an integral part of the local folklore. These nocturnal beings, often described as pale and thirsty figures, were an explanation for unexplained diseases, sudden deaths, and bad luck in the crops. The real connection between Vlad's atrocities and these legends is not a coincidence, but a macabre symbiosis that turned a despot into something even more terrible. Vlad the Impaler did not create the vampire myth, but his image became the perfect catalyst for him. His actions, the way he drained the lives of his enemies, his taste for blood on battlefields, and the stories of his cruelty lined up in a frightening way with popular imagination. The narrative of a ruler who fed on the suffering of his people, who seemed immortal in their ability to inflict pain, began to intertwine with beliefs about the undead. This convergence is the key to understanding how a prince of flesh and bone became the archetype of the vampire we know today. While everyone does X, which is focusing only on Vlad's cruelty, those who know realize that the true genius, or perhaps the true curse, lies in how he became an icon of terror, transcending reality. His actions were so extreme that the human mind sought an explanation that was beyond the mundane. It wasn't just a man, it had to be something more, something supernatural. This need to rationalize the unspeakable horror paved the way for the legends of Strigoi to find a new face, a new name. Dracula, the son of the dragon, but who in the voice of the people sounded like the son of the devil. Vlad's reign was a macabre dance between war and survival, where morality was a luxury he could not afford. He fought the Ottomans with a ferocity bordering on insanity, using scorched earth tactics and psychological warfare. His actions ensured the independence of Wallachia for a time, but at an unimaginable human cost. The terror he inflicted on his enemies and his own people was so deep that it became part of the landscape, of the very atmosphere of Transylvania. Before it is too late, we must understand that the legend is not only about the monster, but about the environment that created it and the minds that immortalized it. The truth behind the stories of vampires in Transylvania is not a single origin, but a complex tapestry where the threads of Vlad's story intertwine with those of popular superstition and later literary fiction. Vlad the Impaler died in 1476 or 1477, but his legend was just beginning to earn a life of its own, a life that fed on fear and imagination. Their brutal acts were recorded in pamphlets that spread across Europe, vivid and often exaggerated descriptions of their cruelty that shocked and fascinated the continent. These reports, although intended to demonize him, paradoxically immortalized him. These pamphlets, printed with the new technology of the Gutenberg press, were the first bestsellers of horror in history. They detailed the tortures, impalements, and banquets of Vlad among the bodies of his victims, some stories even insinuating that he drank the blood of his enemies. The latter, though probably an invention to heighten horror, planted a powerful seed in the collective mind. It is here that the legend of the son of the dragon, Dracul, begins to mix irreversibly with the ancient beliefs about creatures that fed on blood. What I will show now, only 1% know. This merger was not accidental. Most will ignore this, but you need to see how the figure of Vlad fit perfectly into the cultural void for a definitive horror figure. Europe at the time was obsessed with death and the supernatural, and stories of vampires and demons were common. Vlad's tales offered a real monster, a despot so terrifying that it seemed to have come straight out of the darkest nightmares. He did not need sharp canines to inspire fear. His actions were more than enough. And Transylvania, with its dense forests and constant fog, provided the perfect setting for these legends to come to life. Our video is just beginning to unravel the deepest secrets behind this legend. If you are fascinated by this journey into the heart of darkness and want to unravel more mysteries with us, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. His curiosity is what drives us to go deeper. As the legend of Vlad spread, Transylvania became synonymous with mystery and danger. The local peasants, already inclined to believe in magic and curses, found in the stories of the Impaler a confirmation of their oldest fears. The impaling prince and the blood-sucking creature were to them faces of the same dark coin. This confluence of a historical tyrant and vibrant folklore has created fertile ground for imagination. Centuries have passed, and the memory of Vlad never faded. On the contrary, it has been transformed, acquiring layers of mysticism and horror. The story of a man who defied death, who seemed immortal in his cruelty, was irresistible. And so, from a brutal prince emerged a spectre that would haunt literature and cinema for generations, a being that reminds us that the most frightening monsters are often born of humanity itself. What experts hide about Vlad the Impaler is how his image was systematically shaped and exaggerated by chroniclers and propagandists of the time. It was not just a matter of recording facts, but of creating a narrative. The church, for example, had an interest in demonizing any leader who did not align perfectly with its dogmas or could be seen as a threat to the established order. Vlad, with his ruthless brutality and fierce independence, was an easy target. His acts, though real, were amplified and distorted to serve political and religious agendas, transforming him from a feared leader into a demon in human form. You need to understand that the power of the written word, even in the 15th century, was immense. The pamphlets circulating in Europe were not impartial newspapers, they were propaganda tools. They painted Vlad as a soulless monster, an enemy of Christendom, even if he was fighting against the Ottomans, the true enemies of the church. This dissonance is crucial. Most people accepted these stories without question, and the image of Vlad as a bloodthirsty sadist solidified, preparing the ground for the definitive fusion with the vampire legend. This smear campaign, though effective for its original purposes, had an unexpected consequence. It created fertile soil for the seed of vampirism to sprout. The descriptions of his cruelty, the way he drained the lives of his enemies, were interpreted through the lens of local superstitions about the undead. What traditional historians often ignore is the impact of collective psychology. When confronted with unspeakable horror, the human mind tends to seek supernatural explanations. Vlad was not just a man. He had to be something more, something demonic, something immortal. Transylvania, in this context, has become the epicenter of this transformation. Its Gothic landscapes, its imposing castles, and its mysterious forests provided the perfect setting for imagination to flourish. The castle of Bran, although it was not Vlad's main residence, became symbolically associated with him, reinforcing the image of a dark and reclusive lord. This architecture, combined with the aura of mystery and horror stories, solidified Transylvania as the homeland of vampires in the popular mind, an image that persists to this day. There is a detail that changes everything. The truth is that Vlad, in life, fought to protect his people and their culture. However, his memory was hijacked and rewritten. He became a symbol of something he was never, a creature of the night, bloodthirsty, immortal. This recontextualization of his historical figure into a supernatural monster is the real mystery, and it is here that the vampire legend as we know it really began to take shape, long before any Victorian writer dreamed of putting it on paper. The secret technique that transformed Vlad the Impaler into Count Dracula is the alchemy of fiction, the ability to take fragments of history, folklore, and fear and forge them into a new entity. It was the Irish writer Bram Stoker, at the end of the 19th century, who finally consolidated this transformation. Stoker never visited Transylvania, but his research in books and popular accounts led him to the figure of Vlad and local vampire legends. He saw the dramatic potential in this fusion, and the result was one of the most influential works of horror literature. Stoker not only used the name Dracula, which referred to Vlad's Order of the Dragon, but incorporated elements of the cruelty and dark aura of the historical prince into his fictional character. Count Dracula de Stoker was a noble Transylvanian with a mysterious past, an aristocratic and seductive figure, but with an insatiable thirst for blood and supernatural power. This representation has become the definitive image of the vampire, eclipsing the original folk legends and Vlad's own historical figure. It's a OMG #1 moment in the history of pop culture. You need to understand the genius behind this. Stoker took a historical monster, already shrouded in horror legends, and raised it to a mythical level. He gave the vampire a new sophistication, a new psychological depth, and put him in a context that resonated with the fears and anxieties of Victorian society. The vampire was no longer just a rustic creature of peasant folklore. He was a global threat. A predator who could infiltrate the most elegant halls in London. This is what separates those who understand the story from those who only repeat tales. Transylvania, in this new literary context, is no longer just a geographical region to become a kingdom of shadows and mystery, the ancestral home of Dracula. Haunted castles, dark forests, and secluded villages have become essential elements of the vampire landscape, an image that has been enhanced by numerous film and television adaptations. Popular culture embraced this vision, and the myth of the Transylvanian vampire became one of the most recognizable and enduring in the world. The acceleration of the rhythm here is crucial for the final understanding. Even today, the figure of Vlad the Impaler and the vampire legend are intrinsically linked, although most people do not know the complexity of this relationship. The story of a prince who fought for his kingdom with brutal methods turned into a horror tale about an immortal being that feeds on life. This metamorphosis is a testimony to the power of narrative and the human ability to turn fear into legend. But there is a final plot twist that most people have never considered, and it changes everything you think about the death of Vlad. The final plot twist on Vlad the Impaler is not in his physical death, which occurred in battle against the Ottomans, but in his immortality through legend. He did not become a vampire, but his memory, distorted and magnified, was the seed of one of the most powerful myths of humanity. The irony is that in trying to defend his kingdom and its culture, he ended up becoming the icon of a horror that transcended borders and centuries, a monster he never intended to be. His death was only the beginning of his true existence in the collective imagination. The main loop resolution is this: the story of Vlad the Impaler, who has become humanity's darkest legend, is not about a real vampire, but about how fear, politics, and human imagination can create monsters that last longer than any supernatural creature. He was a man of his time, brutal, yes, but also a leader who fought for the survival of his people. The true horror is not what he became in fiction, but the truth of the circumstances that led him to be who he was. The last secret, the plot twist that changes everything, is that Transylvania, by embracing and capitalizing on the vampire legend, paradoxically honors and distorts the memory of Vlad. It attracts millions of tourists fascinated by the myth, but few delve into the complexity of the man behind the monster. Count Dracula is a creation of the human mind, a fusion of fear and fantasy. But Vlad III the Impaler was real, a ruler whose life was as brutal as the century he lived. The shocking conclusion is that Transylvanian vampires are not just fairy tale creatures. They are a reflection of our own deepest fears, the violence that humanity is capable of inflicting, and how we turn history into myth. Vlad did not drink blood to live forever, but his history, steeped in blood and terror, has reached an immortality he could never have imagined. An immortality that continues to haunt us. And so, the legend of Vlad the Impaler and the vampires of Transylvania persists, a dark echo of a brutal past that refuses to die. Every story told, every movie watched, every whisper about creatures of the night, Vlad's shadow lengthens. He is living proof that the most terrifying monsters are not those who live in the shadows, but those who hide in history, hoping that imagination will bring them back to life. The true vampire, perhaps, is the legend itself that never dies.